The valet opened the door, and the soft click of my heels against the marble steps echoed like a clock ticking down. Conversations stopped. Glasses hovered midair. Heads turned. Took them less than 3 seconds to recognize me. I stepped into the hall of my cousin's wedding wearing an emerald green silk dress that hugged my body like it had been made for this moment. Diamond studs shimmered beneath my pulled-back hair, and the clutch in my hand was worth more than what my parents used to pay for rent. Mother's face went pale. Father froze with a champagne flute halfway to his lips. My sister, fragile, pampered, pitiful, blinked like I'd appeared from a nightmare she'd buried long ago. Nobody moved. Nobody smiled. But I scanned the room slowly, deliberately, then offered a small, perfect smile, the kind that hides 1,000 scars beneath lipstick and poise. They never expected me to make it, I said quietly, more to myself than anyone else. Especially not after that night. The music resumed awkwardly. The laughter that followed was thin, brittle, forced. I didn't care. I didn't come for their approval. I didn't come for reconciliation. I came so they would remember what they did. So they'd look at me standing tall, unbroken, and understand. Silence can grow into something sharper than screams. And blood. Blood means nothing when they leave you bleeding on the side of the road. I was never the favorite. That sounds dramatic, I know. Like something a bitter child says in a family feud. But it wasn't bitterness, it was just the truth. My sister Claire was the delicate one, the sensitive soul, the one with big, watery eyes and a nervous stomach and piano fingers, the one they tiptoed around like a sleeping cat. If you raised your voice around Claire, she'd cry. If you looked at her the wrong way, she'd tremble. If dinner wasn't exactly how she liked it, she'd skip meals and fall into quiet spells that scared everyone. So they wrapped the world in bubble wrap for her, and left me outside it. "You're the strong one," Mum used to say, usually while rushing past me to calm Claire down from another meltdown. "She needs more care. Be patient with her," Dad added like I was a nurse, not a child. "You're more mature. She's fragile." And so, I became the quiet one, the responsible one, the forgotten one. Birthdays were always a gamble. I remember turning 10 and waking up early, thrilled to see the decorations, only to find Claire had a migraine. Mum spent the morning in her room, whispering and soothing. "No cake that year. No friends. Let's just reschedule," they said. We never did. At school plays, I'd search the crowd for their faces, but sometimes they didn't come. "Claire wasn't feeling well," Mum would explain later, like I was supposed to understand that a missed performance didn't matter when Claire had anxiety. Understood though. I always understood. When Claire failed an exam, the whole house mourned. When I won a science competition, a distracted "that's nice" love over dinner, I stopped trying after a while. You can only scream into silence for so long before your voice disappears. Claire was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder when we were teens. I remember sitting in the waiting room while Mum and Dad spoke to the doctor like she had a terminal illness. Afterward, they told me to try not to upset her, to keep things peaceful at home. I was 16, walking on eggshells in a house I didn't break. Even as adults, it continued. Claire bounced between jobs and relationships while I worked 2 shifts and kept my head down. She moved back home again, after another failed romance. Mum said she needed peace and quiet to recover. I had just found out I was pregnant. There was no room for my news, not while Claire was rebuilding herself. That night, I sat on my bed and stared at the sonogram photo in my hand. I hadn't even told them yet. Something in me knew they wouldn't react with joy, only concern. Not for me, but for how it might affect Claire's state of mind. Being second became a habit, an identity, something I wore like a scarf, tight and quiet and choking. I told myself it made me stronger, that I didn't need praise or attention, that love wasn't always loud. But then came the night they left me on the highway. And that was the moment I realized. Being the strong one wasn't love. It was their excuse not to care. I found out I was pregnant in a public restroom. Not the romantic moment they write about in books. Just a cheap stick from a pharmacy, shaking hands, and a single blue line that changed everything. I was 22, juggling 2 part-time jobs and barely scraping rent. The father, Liam, had disappeared somewhere between "we'll figure this out" and "I need time." I didn't blame him. He had always been soft-spoken, unsure. Like me, only without the backbone I'd been forced to grow. When I told my parents, the silence that followed was heavier than any lecture. "You've made your choices," Mum said finally, folding her arms like she was bracing for impact. "Now you'll have to deal with them." Dad didn't even look up from the telly. "We can't carry you through this, love. Claire's still not stable, and we've got a lot on our plate already." Claire was in the next room, scrolling through her phone, legs curled up under a weighted blanket. He nodded. Course. Her mental health came first. Pregnancy was lonely. I went to every checkup alone. Bought baby clothes in thrift stores. Spent nights reading parenting books I downloaded for free because I couldn't afford the real ones. And through it all, I didn't tell anyone how scared I was. I had learned long ago that fear wasn't something I was allowed to show. Then, one night in late October, the contractions started. First, I thought it was just back pain from work. But within an hour they were sharp and rhythmic, and I knew I had to get to the hospital. My phone was dead, my bag wasn't packed, and I was out of options. So I called home. Mum answered, clearly annoyed. "Now? Tonight?" "Yes, please. I think I'm in labor." Then, "Well, we're in the middle of dinner, but I suppose your father can take you after we finish." Took them another 40 minutes to arrive. I climbed into the back seat beside Claire, who immediately pulled her hoodie over her head. "Can you not breathe so loud?" she snapped. "I have a migraine." I said nothing, just clutched my stomach and tried to focus on the rhythm of the pain. 10 minutes into the drive, Claire began to cry. "It's too much. It's too bright outside. I feel sick." Dad sighed loudly. "We'll pull over." "This is ridiculous." "But I'm in labor," I gasped. A wave of pain hit me so hard I bit my lip to keep from screaming. Claire shrieked. "She's making it worse." "I can't, Dad, I can't do this." He slowed the car, pulled onto the shoulder, turned to face me. "We'll call you a cab," he said. "This isn't working. Claire's not well." The car door opened. Cold air rushed in. I didn't move. "Out," Mum said flatly from the passenger seat. "You're stronger. You'll be fine. Just figure it out." I stepped out onto the gravel, holding my belly, blinking against the tears that had nothing to do with the contractions. They drove away without looking back. And in that moment, under a flickering streetlight, I realized something brutal and crystal clear. They never saw me as their child. Only as Claire's shadow. Only as the girl who would figure it out. But this time I wouldn't suffer in silence. This time they'd remember. The pain came in waves, hot and blinding. It felt like my body was folding in on itself, like I was being torn open from the inside. And all I could think was, "Please just get me to the hospital." Dad drove like it was any other evening. Slow, cautious, like we had all the time in the world. Claire sat beside me in the back seat, earbuds in, hoodie pulled over her head, muttering about how loud I was breathing. "Can you not do that?" she snapped suddenly, tugging her earbud out. "You're being dramatic. I can't focus." I tried to speak, but another contraction hit, sharp and merciless. I grabbed the edge of the seat, curled forward, and let out a noise I couldn't even recognize. Half gasp, half scream. Claire screamed louder. "Oh my God, Dad, she's freaking me out. Too much. I'm having a panic attack." Mum twisted around in the front seat. "Can't you control yourself?" she hissed at me. "Your sister is sensitive. You know this." "She's in labor," Dad muttered, like that was somehow my fault. I couldn't even speak anymore. My hands trembled as I fumbled with my phone, but the battery was dead. I'd forgotten to charge it in the chaos. We were on a narrow road outside town, the kind of route with nothing but dark fields and the occasional tree. A cold wind blew through the cracked window. My entire lower body ached. My vision blurred with each contraction. "I need help," I gasped, but no one heard me. Claire started sobbing. "I can't be in this car right now. The noise, the lights, it's too much. I feel like I'm gonna faint." Then Dad pulled over. First I thought it was a mistake. That maybe he was going to switch lanes or calm Claire down. Instead he parked on the shoulder, engine idling. "We can't do this," he said. Emotionless. "We'll call someone." I blinked at him. "What?" Mum opened her door and got out. "Claire's having a crisis. You'll have to wait here. We'll call for a cab or something." "A cab?" I cried, barely able to sit upright. "I'm crowning. I need to get to the hospital now." Claire was hyperventilating. Mum rubbed her back like she was the one in danger. "We told you this wasn't the right time to do all this," she said. "But you never listen. Always causing problems." The door opened beside me. Mum stood there, arms folded. "Ouch," she said. "No. You're the strong one," she said coldly. "You'll figure it out." Dad wouldn't even look at me. I stepped out onto the gravel, holding my stomach, biting my lip to keep from screaming again. My knees buckled. Caught myself on the car. And just like that, they drove away. The red taillights disappeared into the dark like they'd never been there at all. I stood alone on a stretch of empty highway, contractions ripping through my body, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. I thought I was going to die. I stumbled to a road sign and leaned against it, dizzy, bleeding, terrified. I screamed, not from pain this time but from desperation. A raw, animal sound that tore from my throat and echoed into nothing. That's when I saw headlights coming around the bend. A truck slowed as it approached. The driver rolled down the window. "You all right, love?" a woman's voice asked. I turned toward her, tears streaming. "Please, I'm in labor." "They left me. I need help." She didn't hesitate. Next thing I knew, I was in the cab of her truck, her warm coat wrapped around my shoulders. She called emergency services, shouting directions. Her hand gripping mine so tight I thought she'd never let go. "They left you," she kept repeating. "Your own family. What the hell is wrong with people?" I don't remember much after that. Just flashing lights, the rush of nurses, the burn of N4. The baby came fast, almost too fast. Screaming, red-faced, alive. When they placed him in my arms, I broke. Tears poured from me like water from a cracked dam. All the fear, all the pain, all the why me, spilled out into the hospital gown. The nurse said I was brave. But I didn't feel brave. I felt empty. And for the first time in my life, I let that emptiness show. Because in that moment, holding the life I'd created while sitting in the ruins of what I came from, I finally understood something awful and liberating. They'd abandoned me long before that night. That highway just made it impossible to ignore. Silence became my sanctuary. After the hospital I changed my number. Blocked them all. I didn't write back. I didn't call. I didn't even look at the old family photos tucked in a shoebox beneath my bed. They didn't deserve to see him. Not his tiny fingers wrapped around mine in the NICU. Not his first smile or the way he used to grip my pinky while he slept. They had forfeited those moments when they drove away that night and left me, bleeding, terrified, and utterly alone. So I stayed gone. The first few months were brutal. I worked nights at a diner and cleaned houses during the day. Slept when he slept. Ate when I remembered. I survived on caffeine, baby giggles, and sheer, grinding determination. Some days I thought I'd break. Other days I wanted to. But I didn't. When he was 3, I enrolled in community college. I studied after bedtime, headphones in, eyes bleary. Took exams on my phone during lunch breaks. Failed sometimes. Cried often. Kept going. By the time he was 5, I had a degree in accounting. By the time he was 7, I had my own freelance clients. A few years later, I opened my own bookkeeping business from the converted laundry room of our rented flat. We moved to a better place with a little garden. I planted daffodils. I never talked about my parents. When he asked about grandparents, I told him the truth without bitterness. Some people don't know how to love the right way. He never pressed. I got therapy. Sat in uncomfortable chairs and unpacked years of trauma like old boxes covered in dust and shame. My therapist said I carried too much. That I still viewed strength as silence. That I was allowed to grieve what I never had. I didn't answer the messages when they came. First a few months after the birth. Then on birthdays. Once when Claire ended up in the hospital, Mum emailed, "You're being cruel." Cruel. As if protecting myself was an act of violence. I read their words, then deleted them. Every time a little more numb. Every time a little more sure. Forgiveness, people say, is for yourself. But so is silence. And mine was loud with purpose. I wasn't trying to hurt them. I just wasn't willing to bleed for them anymore. I never expected success to be so quiet. There was no champagne toast. No sudden, cinematic moment. Just a steady climb. Invoice by invoice, sleepless night by sleepless night. Until one day, I realized I didn't have to check my bank account before buying groceries. My business took off quietly. Word of mouth. Referrals. Clients who respected me, paid on time, and told their friends. I upgraded from the tiny flat to a modest house with tall windows and a garden full of wildflowers. Not the biggest house on the street, but it was mine. And then the car. It wasn't even intentional. I'd gone to just look. But the deep navy luxury SUV called to me. The kind that makes people glance twice when it glides by. The kind my parents used to admire from afar but say was, for other people. I bought it with a straight face and a clean wire transfer. I didn't post often on social media, but when I did, people noticed. A picture of my son in front of our new front door, keys in hand. A beach trip, the SUV in the background. Smiling, peaceful, sunlit. It didn't take long before distant cousins started liking old photos. A few "Hey girl, how are you?" messages trickled in. Then came the message I knew would arrive eventually. From Mum. I know it's been a long time. Claire's not well again. She's lost her job and her apartment. We're really struggling, and we wondered if you'd be willing to talk. No apology. No explanation. Just the same expectation that I'd clean up their mess again. That I'd drop everything. Be the strong one. I didn't reply for 2 weeks. But something in me, curiosity maybe, wanted to see them face to face. Not for closure. Not for reconciliation. Just to look them in the eye now that I stood on ground they never believed I'd reach. So I agreed to meet them. I chose the cafe near the park. Public. Neutral. Bright. I wore my best white coat, my confidence, and the lipstick I'd once been told was too loud for my skin tone. When I pulled into the lot, they were already waiting. Dad's hair had gone gray. Mum looked older, tired, worn from years of chaos that had nothing to do with me. Claire was thinner than I remembered. Her eyes darting anxiously. They all stared at my car as I stepped out. For the first time they looked small to me. And for once, I wasn't the one waiting to be seen. They stood when I walked in like I was someone important. Like they hadn't driven away from me when I was screaming on the side of a highway. I sat down slowly, folded my coat neatly on the chair beside me. No hugs. No fake smiles. Just silence that stretched too long. Claire looked away first. Mum broke it. "You look well." He nodded. "I am." There was a beat before Dad cleared his throat. "We're not here to dredge up the past." Course they weren't. Claire fidgeted with a napkin. Her cheeks were hollow, her eyes heavy. She looked like someone who had lived inside a storm for too long. Familiar look. "She's sick again," Mum said, lowering her voice like it was sacred. "Depression, panic episodes. You know how she gets." I raised an eyebrow. "No, you don't." I was never allowed to. Dad shifted uncomfortably. "She needs inpatient care. We've used all our savings. We thought maybe, with how well you're doing, you could help." Just like that. No sorry. No acknowledgement. Straight to the request. Mum leaned forward. "We were under so much stress back then. We made mistakes. But you've always been the strong one. You don't hold on to things, right?" I stared at them for a long moment. Then I said it. I was in labor. On the side of the road. The words dropped like stones between us. Mum opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. You pulled over because she had a headache. You left me. Bleeding. Crying. Alone. And I still remember how the gravel felt under my knees. I still remember watching your taillights disappear. Claire was crying now. But I didn't feel sorry. You've never once apologized, I said, voice steady. You never asked how I made it to the hospital, or if my son was even alive. You didn't call me for me. You called because you need money. Dad finally spoke. We didn't know how to reach you. You didn't try. Understood. Mum's eyes widened. Please. Don't do this. I'm not doing anything, I said calmly. I'm just giving you exactly what you gave me. I looked them each in the eyes. You gave me silence when I needed love. So now I'm returning it. They started to speak again. More words, more excuses, more panic. But I had nothing left for them. I turned and walked out into the sunlight, shoulders square, heels clicking with quiet finality. And for the first time in my life I didn't look back. When I got home, the porch light was already on. He was waiting, taller now, nearly grown, with his father's eyes and my stubborn chin. He looked up from his phone and smiled when he saw me. That easy, warm smile that made every hard year worth it. Hey, Mum, he said. Dinner's in the oven. I hugged him longer than usual. Later, I stood in the kitchen while the kettle boiled, letting the silence settle. But it was a different kind of silence now. Soft, full, earned. The house smelled like garlic bread and freedom. My son laughed at something on TV. The flowers in the window box swayed gently in the breeze. I thought about them for a moment. My parents, Claire. Their confusion, their desperation, their disbelief that I could walk away without a scream or a scene. But I didn't need revenge. I just needed peace. They could keep their guilt, their rewritten memories, their too-late explanations. I had this life, this love, this calm. I had survived what they thought would break me. I had built something whole out of the wreckage they left me in. And I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. I poured the tea, sat down beside my son, and let the quiet hold me. Because the truth was simple, and always had been. They never expected me to make it. But I did. Without them.